What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully you're doing better than me. That just recorded about a 40-minute podcast where I was talking into nothing because my microphone wasn't on. And then I realized after that's not going to work. So I don't do do-overs and retakes. This isn't a movie shoot, but sometimes you have no choice. So that's what we're going to do. And maybe I can clean up some of my thoughts and you will get part two, because part one now no longer exists, is in a trash can, was me talking into my computer mic, which did not sound very good at all. So I do want to discuss Archie Manning, which the hype, the buzz, the excitement. I mean, shit, I'm excited. Is that a fever pitch? So we will dive into some comments that his grandpa, Peyton and Eli's dad, gave to his grandson. Jerry, and the documentary that was the Cowboys on Netflix, I've watched the first 2 episodes, and I can report back. It's fantastic. So a couple takeaways there. Anthony Richardson's agent had some takes, and I would recommend that he not have takes, because I don't think he's doing his client. I think he's doing his client a disservice. So we'll dive into some of that and some other stuff around the sport of football. But before we dive in, I got to tell you about my friends. I got to tell you about my partners. And let's face it, the best ticketing app I've ever used. And I've used them all. But because of these guys, you want to go to a college football game? NFL games are fun. And I know a lot of you guys are sending me pictures of you guys buying tickets. Going to an NFL game is just a fun way to spend a Sunday. Have a few beers, go with a buddy, root for your team, hopefully see a win, see some exciting stuff. But the college atmosphere, the pageantry of it, even if you, I didn't go to any of these big schools, but have been to the Rose Bowl, I've been to Wisconsin, I've been to SEC games, well, an SEC game, and technically it's Texas, Oklahoma, so not totally count. Haven't been to the true SEC games. Do plan on it, though, before my time on Earth is done. And if you want to do that, I just can't recommend these guys enough. You can search by the venue. You can search by the team. Obviously, concerts, comedy shows, it doesn't get any easier. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app today. Create an account and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's start with Archie Manning. I'm getting away next week. I'm going to Hawaii. And I actually never took my wife on a honeymoon. And so we're doing a honeymoon, baby moon, / just kind of relaxing for 4 or 5 days before football season starts. And our lives get crazy, and then we have a baby. So taking a deep breath. But the only flight I could get home was there's red eyes leaving Maui. And I was like, okay, I'll get one. We'll go for the week, and I'll come back Friday, and we'll touch down Saturday morning at about 6:30 a.m. Then I realized, well, Texas and Ohio State is at 9 o'clock. I can't be sleepy, disoriented, potentially all out of whack. I want to be well rested. So I changed our trip to leave a day earlier and come back a day earlier. Don't tell my wife. Because I need to take in and experience Texas, Oklahoma. But more specifically, Archie Manning. Let's face it, I don't ever remember a more hyped guy who has never played in my life watching football. If I just think about the last 15, 20 years of college stars in football, it was all based on their play, right? When I was in college, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Vince Young, that group, that era of players, it was over a period of time of them making a ton of plays that their hype grew, and then they won Heisman trophies. If you think about the last 6, 7 years, Joe Burrow and Cam Newton were 2 guys that I wouldn't say were on everyone's radar going into the season. By the middle of the year, they were superstars. Baker Mayfield had 3 years of building up his collegiate production, winning games, becoming a star. Caleb Williams won the Heisman Trophy his first year at Oklahoma. So by his second year, which was his junior year in college, because he transferred from Oklahoma, the hype was huge. Trevor Lawrence won a national championship as a rookie. Andrew Luck with Jim Harbaugh resurrected Stanford football. Archie Manning's played 2 games against nobodies. But because of his name, because of the hype, I just don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this. I mean, seriously. And I don't
there was hype behind Tua, but he became a star once he got thrust into the game and made plays. Arch did not create this hype. His family name did. As Colin says, the Mannings are football royalty. And it's true. We're just not going to see a family. I mean, his dad was a superstar. The two sons won a combined 4 Super Bowls. Peyton's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Eli beat Belichick and Brady twice. And Arch isn't even their son. But Archie Manning, who is a legend for a certain era, obviously had a rough NFL career because he played on terrible teams, was dominant college player, gives his grandson advice every time they talk. And Arch Manning, who was giving a press conference, and he hit on a couple things like Field Yates, who just has great hair. Field, I am jealous of your flow. Some people like, whenever I get people talking shit, they're like, oh, grow some hair, you bald bastard. It's like, yeah, this isn't by choice. I didn't choose this life. Sometimes when you're on TV too and you're just around a bunch of people with great hair, you're like, God, I'm a little jealous. And Field, I'm jealous of. He's got good flow. But he had a not too early mock draft, and he had Arch Manning going number 1. And a couple weeks ago, his grandpa's like, he's going to be in Texas for a couple years. And then Arch was asked, he's like, I don't know where Gramps got that one. I'm taking this day by day. But every time that his grandpa hangs up with him, right before he signs off, he says, get down or get out of bounds. And it's funny. And when Arch told the media that comment, I would imagine most people in the press conference room laughed. But it's actually pretty true. And there's a lot of wisdom behind that. Because I think anytime that you have a lot of hype and you haven't done much, people are going to come after you. And everyone in the SEC is going to want to make a name for themselves by lighting this kid up when they get their chance. And unlike these other sports, in practice in football, the one thing you are 100% never allowed to do is to hit the quarterback. Scout team, 1s-on-1s, 11-on-11, you name it. You can't touch that player. Even on your own team, the third stringer, you're not allowed to bring the guy to the ground. That's why they typically wear different colored jerseys. So when you get to the games, defenders in general, regardless who they're playing with, get so excited because finally tackle. But more specifically, if you're a pass rusher or if you have a running quarterback and you're a linebacker, you can hit the quarterback. And you want to hit him really, really hard. I would say no one has a bigger bullseye on him than Arch Manning heading into the season. Think about Ohio State. Feels like they're replacing their entire defense. And for a lot of colleges, even with the transfer portal, that's pretty difficult. Not at a program like this. Because most of the backups at the top programs and the guys they get in the transfer portal won't just be good players. I mean, they're going to be potential top 100 draft picks. I mean, there are going to be countless guys on Ohio State's defense that the casual fan that's not on rivals.com 24/7 has never heard of that will be first-round picks, that potentially will be like Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, that will be superstars, and they're going to be badasses. And game 1, they have been hearing about Arch Manning for 9 months, ever since their team won the Natty. And this is their chance to make a name for themselves. And obviously the SEC, and Ohio State's basically an SEC team in the North, has the fastest, most violent, and best defensive players. Google the draft for the last decade. Any SEC hater, the one thing they can never argue is this is the conference where the most guys get drafted, specifically on defense. And most of the NFL defensive linemen come from this conference. Most of the NFL linebackers come from this conference. They run the fastest, they hit the hardest, and they're just the most violent. And Arch Manning, to me, it's not his fault, but when the defensive coordinators will get in front of their room, he is going to have a circle around him. We're going to want to hit this guy. And he's a running quarterback. That's part of his game, right? So I do think that wisdom his grandpa gave him, get down and get out of bounds, is very, very true. Like, you got to be very careful about being a hero because there are going to be a lot of guys on the other side of the ball against the good teams that you play. And obviously in the SEC, even if a team is not necessarily good record-wise, they're going to have guys on defense that are going to play in the NFL. And they're going to run really fast and hit really hard. And he's got to be very cognizant of, like, the one thing Eli and Peyton got to figure out quick is I'm not a great athlete. I'm not running. So I got to take care of my body. I got to get down in the pocket if nothing's there. I got to throw the ball away. Well, sometimes running quarterbacks, and they're dealing this with Caleb Williams and any guy. We saw Jaden Daniels the other night in a preseason game. Started running up the middle, was like bouncing off guys. Now he scored a touchdown, but even I saw a quote Dan Quinn said after the game, like, "Yeah, we gotta be careful. He's the franchise." It's like when Brian Kelly was like, I've always kind of defended Brian Kelly. Always thought he was pretty good, but I'm starting to go the other way. When he had a quote in that Netflix doc, I watched like 5 of the episodes. I mean, it's okay on the SEC. I mean, they're not showing Alabama or Georgia. It's like I'd kind of like to see those teams. But he's like, my mortgage depends on 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. No, someone who works paycheck to paycheck or year to year, that's where their mortgage depends. You've already made $100 million coaching football, and you signed a guaranteed $90 million contract. So whether that 18-year-old is a number 1 overall pick or sucks, you're not worried about paying the mortgage, and you haven't been in decades. So that's what a cheesy comment. The guy's kind of a cheeseball. I'm out on Brian Kelly, but I'm in on this Texas experience. I can't wait for this game. I haven't been more excited to watch a college football game, week 1 with a lot of unknowns, maybe ever. Like, we get excited for big games. I remember 19 when Tua and Joe Burrow went against each other. Some Michigan, Ohio State games, obviously the playoff games or the bowl games, or just big regular season games. Last year, Oregon, Ohio State, that was sick. But this is a game where it's like, is Arch any good? Is Ohio State any good? No one has any clue, and no one really cares. There are going to be so many eyeballs on this game. Being in the Fox studio and lot, obviously the NFL is king. They take the NFL. It's a really big deal, rightfully so. It's how they pay the bills. But college football is a really big deal to them. And this game, like, you feel the importance. Obviously Big Noon Kickoff's going to be there. Joe Klatt's going to be there. I think this number, some of these preseason games have been like shattering records, right? Like the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, these games are doing like 6-7 million people watching. Now, granted, like the first quarter, if you got the starters in, like 6 million people watching a preseason game. I would imagine this is the most watched college football game in a long, long time. And it really shows you the power of the Mannings. And I hope he's good, because if he's good, more stuff for us to talk about. And as a consumer, I like watching good players.
The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back, baby. Think you know the game? Put your college football knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. From live betting during the rivalry week odds boosts and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to stay in the action from the kickoff to the final whistle. Here's the thing. We got a top 25 matchup happening this week in Ireland. Iowa State taking on K-State. I've been listening to a lot of people. My guy Josh Pate, Iowa State, a little bit of a sleeper this year. You can get them right now. Odds are subject to change. Kind of like Iowa State +3 this week. Across the pond, Iowa State +3. I think I'm going to hammer it. So here's something special for first-timers. New customers, bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers. Get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
I watched the Jerry. It might as well have been the Jerry documentary. The first episode was a lot about Jerry Jones and how he bought the Cowboys, but the Cowboys documentary, and just big picture, I get nostalgic about 90s stuff. I've said this before. I used to didn't understand why my dad always listened to the music that he listened to when he was a teenager or in college. When I was growing up, I'm like, this music sucks. It's so old. Then I realized the only music I listen to is stuff from my childhood. The movies I like are movies from the 90s. It's just, we all become our parents. And I heard a quote the other day, and it really resonated with me, because as I'm 40 years old, having my first kid, you start thinking hey, in 10, 20 years, in 20 years, I'll be 60, my kid will be 20. You start, not necessarily looking at your mortality or thinking about mortality, but you get far, far away from your youth, and you're like, God, it's I'm not old, but I'm definitely not young anymore. The quote was, the youth is lost on the young. It's kind of true, because when you're young, and I'd even argue when you're in your prime of your ambition, your aggression, and I'd say I'm a pretty aggressive human being. Most people I associate with, my friends, that work in different industries, tend to be pretty aggressive. And listen, it's easy when you don't have much or you want a lot to make bold moves, to take it's easy to bet it all, whether you're a gambler, whether you're 401k, and be more aggressive at 38 than it is at 68. right? And watching Jerry Jones, I grew up, my dad was a farmer, and I knew a lot of people who, farming could be very fickle. Like you could have an incredible 4 or 5 year stretch, and then you could have an awful 2 year stretch and lose your ass. But he knew a lot of, just because there are a lot of successful farmers in Northern California and the Valley from basically Sacramento down to Bakersfield. There's basically three parts of California. There's the Bay Area, there's Southern California, then there's the Valley. And forever, Southern California, was known as Hollywood in the movie world, the entertainment world. Obviously, Northern California, Silicon Valley, and then the Valley, then the Valley from Sacramento to Bakersfield was kind of the farming area. And a lot of these farmers, the successful ones, some of these people didn't have college degrees. But what they did have, and I see some of this when I see the young version of Jerry, is they just had big balls. They had stones. And I think a lot of successful people, still to this day, but it's a little different now than back then, where you could just do it all on guile. You could, if you had a personality and you had some stones and you were willing to do things that most people weren't, like you could have some big hits in whatever world or industry you worked in. And obviously Jerry, claimed, who knows, some of these stories as you age become stuff of legend, but he had turned an $800,000 oil well into $100 million. And because of that move, he was able to buy the Cowboys when the owner, was in the banking industry, and we must have hit a big recession. George W. Bush was in this, and he was talking about a big recession hit, and the owner had to sell, and Jerry was able to buy the Cowboys because then he had to borrow another $50 million. But you're just watching Jerry. It's like this guy had just huge balls, and he was just willing to do things that most people were not willing to do. And it started with immediately gets rid of a legendary coach and brings in his guy. Now, Jimmy Johnson was a star coach at Miami, but Jerry didn't give a shit. Blowback, everyone hated him. Everyone thought he was just, some redneck from Arkansas, and Jerry just came in guns blazing. And you watch the Jerry now, because I think about this sometimes. Like, I want my son to see a guy who is not afraid. And I don't mean like I'd step in the ring with Chuck Liddell. I just mean the way we approach life. We got some balls. We're willing to take some swings. And we're not always going to get it right, but we're not afraid to fail. And that was, watching this, why the Cowboys hit it big, is Jerry didn't care. And Jerry believed in something. He got the coaching hire right. And the Cowboys, within a couple of years, were winning Super Bowls. And everyone that was a hater became a lover. And I think you see the guy now, you're like, what happened? Is it just he's too rich? Is he have way more to lose now? Just when you get older, even though his ego's as big as ever, he's just the Jerry Jones in the 90s wouldn't have hired Brian Schottenheimer in a million years. Say what you want about Barry Switzer. Barry Switzer was winning huge games at Oklahoma, like had a huge resume as a head coach. And I just think that, like, if I'm a Cowboy fan and I'm watching that, you realize what a far cry this franchise. Obviously, it's much more glamorous now. There's much more money, but who cares? None of that actually matters. So what? Jerry, Stephen, and Charlotte have better offices, or that Dak Prescott's meeting room is pretty cool. Like, yeah, we just don't win any meaningful games anymore. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is from the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, where he plays a big cocaine dealer. Fantastic movie, by the way. And at the end of the movie, when he's in jail, after basically Pablo and all these guys have gone down, and we tried to take out the cocaine trade in America, and Johnny Depp's character, for anyone that's seen it, obviously was the main reason cocaine was coming into America, was he said that I've always said that my ambition outweighed my talent. And that always resonated with people because, like I said, my dad, like most of the farmers I knew or grew up knowing that were friends of my dad or my dad's kind of ecosystem, I always thought that these guys were just ambitious, aggressive businessmen. But they weren't like the smartest guy in the room. They couldn't walk into like Stanford and just blow people away intellectually. But they would put their nuts on the table when it came to business. And you watch Jerry and you're like, God, this guy had balls. And you watch him now, it's like, you're hiring Brian fucking Schottenheimer? Like, that's what you're doing? And listen, I know the Dallas Cowboy fans, a lot of people hate Dallas because how often people talk about them. But the reason people talk about them a lot is because they have a lot of the huge fan base. No different than talking about the Lakers or the Yankees a lot. It's just a numbers game. But it's pretty embarrassing when you think about it. It's like, I know Mike McCarthy took a lot of crap. I mean, the guy was a winning coach for the Green Bay Packers and won a Super Bowl. To go to Brian Schottenheimer, who no one was going to ever make their head coach. I mean, would Brian Schottenheimer have become an offensive coordinator anywhere? And obviously everything that's going on with Micah, like how's he going to overcome this? But like what a far cry you watch that documentary with Jimmy Johnson, which what a throwback time. I mean, just kind of a different world. There's something pure when you see some of these clips. Like this wasn't the 60s with Bear Bryant. This was the 90s, like 1992, which doesn't sound that long ago, but when you do the math, that's well over 30 years ago. It looks like they're just practicing on a field that I would have gone to recess, and played at Pioneer Elementary. I mean, the field doesn't look great. It's like, I don't even know if this is a facility. It's like Troy Aikman throwing passes to Michael Irvin on a field that looks like at any moment someone could roll their ankle in like some little indentation that an animal had dug. And it's just where now these fields are perfectly manicured. They're either turf or they're mowed every day like it's, Yankee Stadium. Like I've been to the Niners practices, the Eagles. I mean, they're just pristine. And you look back at these clips of like Jimmy Johnson roaming the sideline. Even when I grew up watching some of the clips of Bill Walsh, it's like, where are these teams practicing? There's such... I laugh because in this doc, a huge element, it's stuff of legends to this day, is like when Jimmy Johnson traded Herschel Walker. And nowadays, when your team sucks in any sport, it's like, why do I need this great player if my team sucks? I should trade him, right? I'm going nowhere. This guy has a lot of value. It's the easiest way to reset my franchise. The Cowboys were winning no games. I think they were like 0-6 or 0-7 at the time, and they traded Herschel Walker. And everyone's like, wait, you're telling me he'll fire Tom Landry and trade our best player? It's like, your team sucks, and your team has sucked for several years. Who cares how good this player is? But it makes you realize, back in the day, the way these teams made a lot of money was getting you to show up at the game. This wasn't, I think about like when I was a kid, and I watched... I grew up, our local games were for basketball were the Sacramento Kings. And I didn't have cable TV because where I lived, you either had, we didn't get basic cable. You had to get either the satellite or nothing. And we didn't get the satellite till probably like 2000. So like my freshman year in high school. And we used to just have basic channels, right? ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and like our local channel. And the Sacramento Kings, who like any NBA team plays 82 games, I'm pretty sure we got like 25 or 30 games. Like that was the local TV deal. You got a quarter of the games, and that wasn't that long, 25 years ago. And nowadays, everything is predicated on the television numbers. So whether you come to the game or not, like no one would just suck and just not trade Herschel Walker for a hole. So I think the world has changed so much in sports. That's why I say with Myles Garrett, Jimmy Haslam was given a get out of jail free card. He asked for a trade. Your team sucks. He's an all-time great player. You could just press the pivot button, trade him for a hole. But it's like, no, we got to keep him. Do you really? No, you don't. The right move would have been to trade him. But yeah, man, I get a little nostalgic watching that documentary. I'm excited to watch the rest of it. I highly recommend it. This is not a paid advertisement. This is just a lover of football. There's something too, and we were talking about this morning in the pre-show meeting. Now we know so much about guys, social media, guys have their own YouTube channels. So many guys have their own like documentaries. And there's not a mysterious element to basically any famous person anymore. And back then you're like, wait, these guys have a home where hookers and cocaine just wait for them after practice. Like this is really going on. Like some of these stories with Michael Jordan, no one actually knows if it's true or not because we just don't know. It's like, is this true? Maybe. Did he really slam an 18-pack and then score 45? No one's ever tweeted about it. No one's ever shown me video about it. It's just stuff of legend. It might as well be true. And sometimes when you hear these stories, you like want them. It's like, this is badass. And now we have the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder just won the championship and half their guys never had a beer. Meanwhile, Michael Irvin was saying, yeah, we were all doing blow ecstasy and hookers. So it's just different time, fun times. It's almost like a movie. Remember when ESPN got shit from the NFL for playmakers? It's like, guys, it's kind of like the mid-90s Cowboys. Okay, final week of the season for LIV Golf wraps up a little Midwest swing starting in Chicago, where I attended, then went to Indianapolis and finishes up this week with the team championship. John Rahm won the individual title, 18 milli, beat out Joaquin Neiman, who won 5 times this year. And now we go to the team championship, which got a little Ryder Cup feel. Going match play the first couple days, singles and foursomes, to heading into the final day where it'll just be normal stroke play. And John Rahm obviously won the individual title. I like Legion 13, his squad, to win the whole thing and just keep collecting those checks and finish out the season in Michigan before guys like John Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, and Terrell Hatton head to the Ryder Cup here in a couple weeks in New York at Bethpage, where I kind of like the Euros. But, yeah, should be a fun week in Michigan. Hopefully anyone there enjoys it. It's been a good little Midwest swing for the team championship. I saw today that Anthony Richardson's agent, I think you got to be very careful. When you're a starting quarterback and a good player, you can say some things that piss people off. Your agent can say some things. I remember hearing a story when I was in the NFL, how Tom Condon and Bill Polian used to get into it. Tom Condon was Peyton Manning's agent and basically, was just drove a hard bargain. Peyton Manning liked his money. And I remember hearing a story, don't know if it's true or not, want to believe it, where Bill Polian basically hung up on him because he was screaming like, how do you expect me to build a team? And Tom Condon was like, more. Who knows if that's exactly how it went down, but I want to believe it. And Peyton Manning had that juice. So if his agent wanted to piss off the GM, he could. Same with Tom Brady, same with Patrick Mahomes, same with Aaron Rodgers, same with great players in their prime. You know who no one ever wants to hear from? Really a couple people. The kicker, the punter, the long snapper, and the backup quarterback. That's why most backup quarterbacks we never hear from. The Chicago Bears just gave Tyson Bagent 2 years, $10 million. You know why? They love the guy. Ben Johnson was singing his praises like a week ago. I saw Ryan Poles during the Bills game, the preseason game, was in the booth, and I wasn't watching live, but I saw the headline that he said he's the hardest working guy on the team. But they just love the guy. And that's how any guy, Chase Daniels had a 14-year career as a backup, started a career 5 games in his life, played in the NFL for 14 years. You know why? Guys liked him. Guys loved him. You know who one of Andy Reid and the Chiefs' favorite players was? Chad Henne, backup quarterback. Because you basically become like an assistant coach. You're there to service the starting quarterback, help him out during the week, service the defense, and just being a good vibe guy. Yet Anthony Richardson, I think it's going to be tough for him to come to grips. Not Anthony Richardson, maybe. He believes, I'm sure he's a starter. But, you're a backup, bro. That's who you are. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You can have a long career. And maybe he could become a starter. But you went from being a starter to now you're a backup. And let's face it, he wouldn't start for any team in the league in 2025. Right now, he would not start for any team in the league. He needs a lot of work to be done. And hopefully, for his sake, like a Sean McVay and Andy Reid, someone like that, trades for him and just works with them on the side while their starter and their team plays. But his agent got a little mouthy today. I saw some quotes on ESPN.com, and I was like, I don't know if that's a great idea. I had them pulled up, and then here's what Anthony Richardson's agent told ESPN. We have a lot to discuss. Trust is a big factor, and that is at best questionable right now. Anthony came back and made the improvements in the areas he needed to improve. And by all accounts, he had a great camp. Steichen made a decision. That's the decision we got to live with, but no hard feelings, nothing personal. I just think that was Anthony Richardson saying that Steichen made the decision, nothing personal. Meanwhile, his agent saying, by all accounts, he made the improvements. I didn't know his agent was on the coaching staff. I didn't know he was the assistant GM. How the fuck would he know that? But most importantly, sometimes you become the company you keep. And this guy works for Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson doesn't work for this guy. And Anthony said all the right things after getting benched. But when you're the backup quarterback, you don't want your agent saying things like this. It does not help your case. And to me, someone, ideally Anthony Richardson, but someone in Anthony Richardson's life would tell him to get on the phone with his agent and say, don't ever say that again. Don't ever speak for me publicly again. And maybe he's speaking for him because Anthony Richardson is not going to say this publicly because he can't. But this is not a good look. And this is what you got to be very careful of. Last year, you had a moment that, by all accounts, based on all the former players, the most embarrassing moment in like the history of the NFL. He just tapped out in the middle of a game at quarterback. Unheard of, unprecedented. Just because he was tired. Not because he was injured. He needed a sip of water. Every player was like, fell out of their chair. They couldn't believe it. People were like, Lamar Jackson like runs 1,000 yards a game all around, and I've never even seen him remotely been like, hey, I need a blow. And I believe that's when his career unofficially ended for the Colts. You got to be careful, because if you start being viewed as a backup developmental player, say this for Trey Lance. He might not be a great football player and never lived up to the hype clearly for being a top pick. There's not much drama there. There's no complaining there. There's not people bitching and moaning there. And when you do that, it's like anything in life. You become exhausting. You become, it's like, those needy friends. I don't really do needy people in my life. I think that's why me and Colin get along really well and have a great working relationship. Both of us are we don't need shit. You just tell me when, where. I'm not going to ask many questions. I'm very easy to deal with. I'm not that complicated. I'm very low maintenance in the sense of like, I'm not asking for much. And I think that's what I want on my backup quarterback. So I think Anthony Richardson's agent did his clients a major disservice, because now it's like, I don't think it's a lock Anthony Richardson's on the team come week 1, because you can have him as a backup. That doesn't make much sense. Another thing I think with quarterbacks, a lot of people have been saying this. I got a text today from an NFL buddy, because we did a segment on the television show about Colin's show, that Burrow, like, is he going to ask for a trade after this season? Is this season going to be the one that breaks the camel's back and the floodgates open and Burrow goes like full NBA player, like, get me the hell out of here? And maybe that's true, because if you watch the Monday night game, their defense looks atrocious. I think it's easier to overcompensate for average personnel and out-scheme people on offense than it is defense. Like, you can either make open field tackles or you can't. You can either rush the passer or you can't. Like, there is a physical component to defense that, like, I'm dictating where I'm going on offense. On defense, I'm just following you. Right? It's a lot harder. If my corners can't play, my corners can't play. And the stat, I mentioned this yesterday, is that Trey Hendrickson accounted for almost half the Bengals sacks. So their defense sucked last year. This guy was dominant. He accounted for half the sacks. You remove him, their defense is going to be really bad. Now, I think at the end of the day, he's going to end up playing. But even if this goes poorly and Joe Burrow has another 45 touchdown season, he's remarkable, team misses the playoffs, fire the coach, he could go, it's time for me to leave, send me to a real organization. We've seen this before. Carson Palmer was on the show today. Carson Palmer once told Mike Brown, I'm done playing here, trade me. And Mike Brown said, kiss my ass, and Carson Palmer retired. Like, that happened. You think Mike Brown 20 years later, maybe a little less, 17, 18 years later, older, more stubborn, is going to be like, oh yeah, Joe, I'll just trade you to the Rams for a couple first-round picks? No chance. Absolutely zero, especially after he just paid the wide receivers. So now the reality is Joe Burrow accepted his contract. And who knows? Maybe they end up, their defense is a little better and they win 10 games. But one thing with football that will never change, you can win games with an elite offense, but you cannot beat real teams, and especially win playoff games or bowl games or conference championships, if your defense just blows. Because in the biggest games, you're playing the best teams. And typically the best teams are well-rounded. So Mike Leach's best teams at Washington State or at Texas Tech, their fundamental flaw was always going to be offensively, they might be able to hang with any team, but defensively, they just weren't going to be good enough. They had no chance. And that's how it kind of feels. And personnel issue. So offensively, I think the Bengals are going to be awesome. I think defensively, though, they are going to have major issues.